Good morning, common people with sense, somebody just said. Look at my collar's all sticking out. What's going on with that? Anyway, listen, very good morning to you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It is Thursday. It is, what date is it today? Pooch, what's the date? Is it the 8th? January the 8th. I'm very, very pleased to say we are here. Behind me, as you can see, is a clock. On front of me is various clocks. People are loving the clocks. We're going to be talking about Hugh Edwards a lot this morning. We'll be seeking advice from our newsreader, Edward Hughes, with the news, of course, because he's a bit upset to find that Hugh Edwards is back on the front pages. Look who's Hugh. Apparently there's going to be a TV drama starring Martin Clunes as Hugh Edwards. So it's all coming back. We'll be giving you a run through on all the stuff that's in the papers. Kevin Badenoch is going to be having a go at saving pubs. We're going to be talking about fat jabs on the front of the Daily Mail. We've got the most fantastic guest for you this morning to look through the papers for us. And it's William Yarwood from Taxpayers Alliance. William, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Great to see you. Thank you so much for getting up so early. And it's horrible weather out there. It's raining. It's cold. At least it's not black ice, but there's an awful lot of councils who are getting into trouble. And we might actually make British councils, certainly English councils, planks of the day because people are slipping and sliding around. They haven't got any grit. Haven't got any grit going on, which seems to me absolutely ridiculous. Only 49 weeks till Christmas, says Truth Junkie. We're going to be reading out loads of your super chats. We're going to be bringing you all manner of messages from all over the world, all around the world. We'll talk about Layla Cunningham being promoted as the reform choice for Mayor of London. She's going to go head-to-head with Sadiq Khan. We're going to talk about Waltham Forest, a council where apparently they refuse to put swastikas on the front of the town hall. Very strange story. We'll tell you what that's all about. Also, apparently banging sticks together solves crime, according to a bloke who used to live in Japan, and we'll be showing you some of that. Unfortunately, there's also a story that says that the Metropolitan Police, due to diversity controls, has been hiring people who have committed terrible sex crimes against children. They actually hired a bloke who was a child rapist to work at the Metropolitan Police as a police officer, despite the fact that he had prior investigations into him, and despite the fact that he had done all manner of terrible things. But they brought him in basically because he was black. It's my birthday and I'm spending it with Mike Graham, says Alison. Very, very good morning to you, Alison, and a very happy birthday for you to you as well. Also, we'll talk about the seizing of ships, because that's all the mainstream media wants to talk about. We're not that interested. But let's get it on. Before we do anything, though, we want to bring you a message, which we should have brought you yesterday, from Donald MacLeod, who is, of course, our Scotland correspondent, a good friend of ours, impresario, entrepreneur, businessman extraordinaire. Let's go, Donald.
Happy New Year, Mike, and what a great start to 2026. Absolutely smashing it, mate. All the best. What a great, fantastic show. Brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant.
Hang on, we almost went back to the beginning there. I don't have to do it all again. Anyway, William, listen, welcome to the show.
Thank
you so much for coming in. We are in our brand new home. Every day that we're here, we're sort of trying to make a little bit of an improvement from time to time. The sound wasn't so great on Monday. It's a lot better now. We're getting loads and loads of people signing up for super chats. We're getting loads of great messages coming in from all over the world. Wherever you are in the world listening, we've got people in Japan, we've got people in the Philippines, we've got people in America, in Canada, all over Europe, in Dubai. In fact, we've got a Dubai heron for you a little bit later on when we'll come to that. But William, let's have a look at what's on the front pages of the papers. I'd like to start off with Hugh Edwards.
Yeah, well,
because he's on the front of
just get him out of the way, shall we?
Hugh out of the way. There he is, front page of the Sun. Look who's Hugh. And of course, we've got a special interest in this because our own newsreader, Edward Hughes,
Of course, yes.
who is not anything like Hugh Edwards. You know, what he doesn't do is send pictures of himself to anybody.
That's good.
And he doesn't.
You might get into trouble for doing that.
Yeah, he doesn't pay anybody to have them send pictures. But I was just reminded, because the Sun have done a great sort of rundown of what happened, and you go all the way back to July the 8th, 2023, because if you remember, the Sun got into a lot of trouble over this.
Yes, they did.
Because people were saying, how dare you, go into somebody's private life? It's a shocking thing to do. Do you remember? And they were kind of sort of portrayed as if they were the enemy, right? But it was July the 8th, 2023, the Sun revealed how a BBC star paid a youngster £35,000 for explicit images. July the 12th, we revealed the star broke lockdown to meet another young man.
Yeah.
And then his own wife, Vicky, on July the 13th, 2023, revealed that it was him. And then it turns out that he's actually been found or charged with making 37 indecent images of children. I mean, I know that we laugh about this, but this is a very serious story.
It is serious, Mike. And one thing I think it's important to mention about Hugh Edwards, how apart from obviously get kicked off the air, really faced any real consequences, to be honest with you.
No.
I mean, one of the things that Tim Davie, when he was chief executive of the BBC,
that there was no mention of reforming the jury
Select
system.
Committee, and he was asked basically, is Hugh Edwards going to give any of his salary back, because that was needed, that was in contract, and he was like, well, we'd like him to, and the MP said, well, are you going to force him to? And we're like, oh, we don't have the ability to do so. It's like,
what are you going to do if he doesn't give it back? As far as we know, he hasn't given it back, right? He's still living in his £5 million house in South London, in Dulwich, which is a very nice part of the world. He's also still in receipt of a very lovely gold-plated pension, which is worth hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, which is our money, by the way.
Yeah, all paid by licence fee payers, taxpayers, right? And he's received absolutely no consequences for any of this, proving that, once again, there is a two-tier system in this country where, you know, if you're a big public figure and you do something as horrendous as what Hugh Edwards did, you know, you say sorry, you know, you leave your job, but as long as you're outside the public eye, then the justice system just doesn't care about you, right? But make a mean post on Twitter, you know, oh, that's 3 years for you, mate.
3 years in prison, So do you remember when he did actually appear in front of the court, which was Westminster Magistrates, July 31st, 2024? He admitted having paedophile videos of a boy who was as young as 7, right? Do you remember when he turned up and he had the dark glasses?
Yes.
And it was almost like he was portraying himself as some kind of matinee idol.
Yeah.
You know, and he'd done this whole kind of, you know, he'd slimmed down. He was looking, you know, obviously what he thought was buff, I think is the right phrase to use in that particular parlance, right? And then he only, a few weeks ago, re-released another picture of himself on Facebook as if he was about to kind of relaunch himself back into the public eye. I find it pretty sickening that a man who does that has faced, as you say, no time in jail. He's got enough money that he never has to work again, probably.
Paid for by us once again.
Paid for by us, you know, underwritten by the British taxpayer and the licence fee payer. And, you know, he hasn't suffered anything.
No, not at all. And you know what, honestly, Mike, the last thing I want to watch is a show about this guy. That's the last thing I want to watch. And I think that you often see that with public figures, don't you? You know, whenever they do something bad, they often, because you mentioned when he walked into the magistrate's court and he was looking all, you know, a bit mysterious and a bit buff, but also he's sort of portraying himself a little bit as the victim as well. He feels like he's victimized, you know. No one understands me. I made mistakes, you know, I'm only human, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, what you did is not a mistake in inverted quotation marks, right? And actually, I don't want this guy anywhere near public life. But actually, to be honest with you, he should be in prison. Actually, he should be in prison. People have been gone to prison for way less work.
What message does it send
to
people who are, because, you know, people talk about horrible sex crimes, of course, and while he may not have actually done anything in terms of actual physical activity, the fact is that if he's looking at sexual images of children, those children have been victimised in order for that film to have been made.
Precisely. And also just possessing those images or possessing those videos is by nature illegal, right? And people have gone to jail for a very, very long time, quite rightly, for holding those things. And yet Hugh Edwards has got away with it. And now, seemingly, there's a potential chance of him rehabilitating himself. But, you know, you're not buying it, Mike. Your viewers aren't buying it. And I'm certainly not buying it either.
Yes, absolutely right. Cindy says this, sound is great, Mike. I think some people might have a problem with their own audio. Yeah, there is that. Some people have said that they're having trouble listening to some parts of the show. Do let us know if you are having trouble. Some people are having trouble, but a lot of people are saying it's absolutely fine. Wayne says, speaking of Peter Blexley, is he going to be a regular guest? Yeah, we're trying to get Peter on. Peter's in the middle of a big tour at the moment, talking about his previous sort of life as a police investigator. And as soon as he's got a space, we will get him on. Nothing wrong with the sound here. Maybe you should refresh your browser if you're having problems with the sound, says Geordie Mark. Lots of other stories to do. Morning, Mike. Looking good. Nice, relaxed, sideways lean on the desk from your guest. Improvement on Tom Slater yesterday. So you're already getting for your.
I'm relaxed. Well, I'm a relaxed guy, Mike. You've never been a relaxed guy.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Brilliant. Loads and loads of people talking to us this morning. Let's talk about some of the stories on the front pages. The Times, of course, leads with a different story. They're talking about UK joins the pursuit of Putin's shadow fleet. Now, the mainstream media are fascinated by this story, and I was watching it yesterday afternoon. And people like Sky and the BBC just can't leave it alone. You know, they're sort of asking questions about this tanker. How did it manage to get through the, you know, the supposed I don't know, border that was around Venezuela. It's somewhere up in the North Atlantic near Iceland.
Yeah.
People, British troops have been involved in boarding it. What's the story?
Yeah, well, first of all, just on the first point there, when you mentioned the fact that the BBC and the Sky News and the mainstream media are obsessed with these kind of stories, actually, that is more true than I've ever seen it before. They love geopolitics. They almost never talk about domestic politics in any way. I remember when Rachel Reeves was found out for basically lying about the £20 billion black hole.
Yes.
And I thought, this should be headline news. Why? And I turn on Sky News, they're talking about Ukraine. Turn on BBC, they're talking about Israel, Gaza. So, yeah, that's just a consistent theme in the mainstream media. But, yeah, so US and UK forces have been involved in seizing a oil tanker, which looks a bit run down, quite honest with you.
They always look
terrible. It's connected with Venezuela and also connected with Russia.
It's been sailing under the Russian flag.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. I'll be honest, I'm not in principle against this in any way. I've actually been relatively positive about the whole Maduro being taken by the United States. And also, I've also just loved the whinging from the usual suspects about it.
So much, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Bring themselves to say, maybe this is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. But also, you know, I think for some of these people, people like Jeremy Corbyns of this world, the Richard Bergens of this world, you know, they will defend any third world communist dictatorship because the West is against them, right? They'll just defend it on principle.
Well, let's not forget Jeremy Corbyn was the guy who, when the poison attack happened in Salisbury, said, we don't think we should be blaming Russia.
Yeah,
for this. You know,
exactly.
We know what all the facts are, right?
Yeah.
Okay then, Jeremy.
When it was quite clearly Russia who did it, right? Everybody knew that. But yeah, no, I'm actually relatively pro this. I've been relatively pro the US intervention in Venezuela generally, mainly because it also destroys an old myth about soft power in international law. International law is essentially the last refuge of like liberals and scoundrels who essentially think that, you know, the rules, you know, we've got to play by certain rules and may misunderstand the nature of geopolitics, which is ultimately backed up by violence and force, and also the fact that actually, in order to get rid of terrible dictatorships and terrible communists in other countries, you don't just write them strongly worded letters about how much you disagree with their drug peddling. It's like, no, you go into their country late in the evening, you take them away, and then you try them under your own cause.
Yeah. And I mean, Maduro, of course, I mean, we're going to be filming Plank of the Week later on today, and Maduro is going to figure in Plank of the Week because this is the guy who actually did a big song and dance, if you remember, in Venezuela, saying, "Oh, you want to get me? Come and get me."
That's like, all right.
Well, please get into this helicopter while we fly you back to the United States of America. Absolutely hilarious. But yeah, so, I mean, an awful lot of people are saying, you know, this whole Greenland situation is going to be terrible. Is Donald Trump going to invade Greenland? Is he going to sort of try and take it by force? I'm not sure that it's as big of a deal as everybody's making it.
I think also there's an element where Trump likes to sort of posture and use the stick to begin with. And then eventually his final position softens and he gets what he wants. I think basically what he might do is he might just give a lot of money to Greenland to have a military base there. He might just do that in the end. I think he's just doing it because, you know, Trump's Trump. What goes on in his head, you don't know sometimes. But 9 times out of 10, what he says, especially with this kind of stuff, never comes to fruition. And yeah, I think Greenland will just be given some money and a base will be felt there. But yeah, another point to make on the Venezuela point, I was actually a little bit disappointed with the reaction from a lot of our politicians on this, mainly because they were sort of umming and ahhing about it. And when I looked at, say, for example, the German Chancellor, the Prime Minister of Greece, the French President, and the Canadian Leader of the Opposition, they were all extremely strong in coming out in favour of this, but all of our politicians were like umming and ahhing. Oh, on one hand this, on the other hand that. We don't know the details.
Could decide.
It's like, oh, so it's like, no, can't you just accept this as a moral principle that a communist, like, scumbag has been removed in the middle of the night without any civilian casualties? Like, this is not Iraq, this is not Afghanistan, it's not even remotely the same thing. And also, quite frankly, why should an ally of Iran and why should an ally of Russia on America's doorstep be allowed to have a communist dictatorship, which is a direct threat to the very people who Trump's trying to protect, i.e. the American people and the Western Hemisphere? It annoyed me that there wasn't as much sort of strength and backbone from a politician to that issue. And I think that's like with everything, right? We've talked about this kind of stuff before.
Yeah.
Like some of our politicians need to grow a spine and say, no, this is a good thing. And actually, as we've seen with the polling, the majority of Americans support it and the majority of Venezuelans support it. So if those two groups support it, then I think our politicians come out and say, good for them.
You mentioned Iran, of course. There's lots of things going on in Iran, which again, the mainstream media don't seem to want to cover. We can't seem to be shown all these protests that are going on, and it seems a very, very odd way to behave if you're in the media, to be laser focused, as Big Islam would say, only on Venezuela and Greenland, and completely disavow what's going on in Iran. Because one of the interesting things about that tanker, for example, is that the belief is that it may have been used previously to ship arms, drugs.
Yes.
Towards the Iranians and towards Gaza, towards the Palestinian resistance force,
yes,
the scumbags in Hamas. These sort of Putin shadow ships, and it's the kind of what they call the axis of evil, have been used to ferry stuff across the Atlantic, and it needs to be stopped. And I think that's absolutely fine. Let's move on to the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Nigel Farage will be happy. He's on the front page with Layla Cunningham.
He has indeed.
They announced yesterday that she is going to be their London mayoral candidate in the next election. I'm a bit puzzled about the Sadiq Khan situation. He seems to be able to continue to stand.
Yes,
despite the fact that he's meant to have term limits, isn't he?
There's no term limits on the London mayoralty. I think there should be, personally, but there's none at all. But it also just shows Boris did it for 8 years, Livingston did it for 8 years. I think most people get bored after 2 terms. Khan loves the game. He loves it, mainly because he probably thinks he can't do anything else at this point.
Yes.
But it is quite extraordinary, and also maybe because he knows he'll win. I obviously with the Layla Cunningham thing, I'll admit, not a massive surprise, really, not really a very rabbit out of the hat.
Right.
She's been a very active member of Reform in London. She's on TV.
She's a former Conservative councillor.
Yeah, she's a former Conservative councillor for Westminster City Council. Yes, she is, and she's now not standing again, mainly because she wasn't going to win her seat. Because again, London's not quite a reformy area, but there's some outside areas which they think
London seems to me now to be like a sort of completely independent state. It's like pro-Remain. It's now
People's Republic of Khan.
minority white, 38% white British. It doesn't seem to have any sort of right-leaning people whatsoever. And I remember back in, I think it was 2019, the only seat that the Labour government or the Labour Party won in that year when Boris Johnson swept to power was Putney.
Yeah, exactly. It was in London, Southwest London, my ends. When it comes to reform's chances in London, I understand Nigel's point. Basically, they want to appoint a reform leader in London, and Layla, I think, is the correct choice for that one. Although, of course, there was discussions around Ant Middleton, whether he would be potentially a reform.
He was never actually. I mean, he might have been considered.
Yeah,
he was never sort of named. Was
no, he was never named. So, but a lot of people online started complaining about Layla Cunningham being chosen, and they obviously mentioned the Ant Middleton thing. And my first response was basically saying exactly what you said, which is, well, Ant just appeared at Reform Conference once. He's never explicitly said, I would like to do this or I'd like to do that. And I'm sure Reform considered him. But, Layla's got experience. She was a Crown prosecutor. She's been a counsellor. She's a mother of 6 or 7 kids. She's got life experience. And also she's lived in London pretty much most of her life. Yeah. So I think as a candidate, I think she's possibly in the best position to take on Khan. But the question is, Mike, what are the Tories going to do about this? Because there's going to be, as you mentioned, you can get Tories elected in London, although Boris Johnson was a bit of a wet metropolitan. Right? He wasn't really a super right-wing Tory. But if Layla gets, obviously she's on the ticket for the London mayor now, what are the Tories going to do? Are they going to stand aside? Are they going to unite behind Layla to potentially get rid of Khan? And this is going to be interesting. Do the Tories hate Reform more, or do they hate Sadiq Khan?
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big question for them in 2027.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I think we've got a bit of a clip, actually, from Layla Cunningham's press conference yesterday. Let's have a look.
I love this city with all my heart. But unlike some in this room, I'm not blind to what it's become. London, one of the greatest cities on earth, is no longer safe. And that didn't happen by accident. That happened on Sadiq Khan's watch. Let's just go through some stats. Knife crime in London is up 68% since 2016. Robbery is up by more than 50% during that same period. More than 100 phones. are stolen every single year, and that's just those we know about. We are living, ladies and gentlemen, through a rape epidemic. You see, crime for me is not theoretical, like some of the journalists who say I'm scaremonging. My family has experienced it many times. In fact, one time, my kids were targeted by gangs and balaclavas, who people say don't exist. Day after day, near us, in broad daylight. We were all terrified. I turned to the police, naturally. I was told there were not enough resources. So I gathered the evidence myself. In fact, I just had a baby then. I put him in the carrier. I followed the gangs. I took photos because they were all in balaclavas. Their shoes were very distinct. I protected my family when the state couldn't. The press called me vigilante mum, but I should never have been put in that position. There should have been backup, but there wasn't. There should have been leadership that cared, but there wasn't. And I had to risk my life, my baby's life, my family's life to protect my family. Enough.
Leila Cunningham there speaking at the Nigel Farage Reform press conference yesterday as she decides that she wants to run to be mayor. It's coming up to 20 minutes past 7. This is the Mike Graham Show. You are watching us now on Thursday, January the 8th. Great lady, very articulate, says Simon. Oh my God, such a lot of moaners on here this morning. Just chill, people, says Nefertari. Yeah, there's people going, why is William not sitting on my left? Why are you sitting on his left? I mean, well, you know, I don't know the answer to that. Some people suggesting that that we should have more clocks on the wall because maybe we should have some international timing clock scenario. There's some more clocks for you. You can't get enough of those. One here from official Gammon guys. We always wanted someone with 6 or 7 kids to be centre right. Okay. Here's one from Cute Kittens. I feel like just watching through a mirror to settle my nerves. What? What's going on? Decor, what about international time clocks on the black wall to side of Mike? Plump on the edge of the side table is lost behind the guest. Move to corner to the side of the guest. That's from Fire Up the Quattro. I mean, people are taking this very seriously. They don't like the way that the plank is there. They don't like the plant. They don't like the posters behind me. They don't like the lamp. You know, maybe what we should do is hire an interior decorator to come in. The most important thing is that we're out here, we're live, and we're giving it to you straight because that's what we do. Other stories on the front pages today. Daily Mail's got, you need to be on fat jabs for life. An Oxford study has shown that people who go on these fat jabs, of which there are many, you probably know some people, right?
I do, yes.
I mean, I do. There's loads of people in Westminster on them, loads of people in the media on them. I mean, like, you can just look at them and go, blimey.
Yeah, it's the gaunt cheeks.
That's the one. Yeah. And they always look really unhealthy. But the interesting thing is that, like I suspected, as soon as you go off them, you just put the weight back on again.
Yeah.
So they're now saying if you're actually going to do it, you'll probably have to take them for life.
Yeah, and what a surprise. These things were supposed to have no side effects whatsoever. Because obviously this is just an easy get out of jail free card for losing weight. Look, I'm not against people using these in principle. Like, I don't have an issue with it.
I mean, I should be on the NHS.
No, I was just about to say, I don't believe they should be taxpayer funded on the National Healthcare Service. And we at the Taxpayers Alliance have called that out before.
Yeah.
Because the idea that it would save money is nonsense, because actually if more and more people go on fat jabs, that means the bill's going to go up. And also the likelihood they're just going to charge more for these drugs is also going to go up. So the idea, like with anything you put on the NHS, with like anything you give to the state, the costs are naturally going to increase over time.
Yeah.
But I still happen to believe in losing weight in the old-fashioned way. So I lost a bit of weight last year. I'm planning to lose a bit more weight this year. But I'm in no real rush, mainly because I quite like fish and chips and I quite like drinking. I'm not morbidly obese. But I think that the way in which, especially in Westminster in the media, some of these people are heavily reliant on them, and then do no diet, do no exercise. That is in itself quite unhealthy.
It's really
unhealthy. And they look unhealthy, right? They look unhealthy.
They look unhealthy, and you don't know what the long-term effects are. I mean, I was talking to a doctor about this the other week, and he said, we haven't really been using these drugs for long enough to know how detrimental they are to the long-term health of anybody.
Exactly.
So it's really dangerous. Let's talk about Waltham Forest Council.
Yes.
My favourite story of the day, I think. Apparently, they're making a movie out there.
Yes, they are. So there's producers of a Second World War military drama featuring Nicolas Cage himself. They've been evicted from Waltham Forest Town Hall. because they wanted to, and get ready for this, folks, this is hilarious. They wanted to drape the area in highly visible swastikas. So people in the comments who are complaining about the background, maybe we need some highly visible swastikas in the background to make these to make these people happy. But nevertheless, it's a film. Like it's a Second World War film, and they're supposed to be talking about Germany. There's going to be Nazi flags. Like, what do you expect?
Right.
It's like, oh no, we're talking about World War II. We're going to have to use a swastika. It's like, it's a film. What do you expect to happen, man? I mean, obviously, councils have the right to say whether they can or can't put stuff up. But like I said, it's a film. It's just not really a big deal. It's not like Nicolas Cage is a National Socialist and has decided to take over Waltham Forest Town Hall with a gang of people in brown shirts. Is it like, just get a bit of a grip?
Maybe being the council, because the council lots of councils are coming in for a lot of gyp this morning for not putting grit down on the roads, and people are falling about all over the place. People being admitted to hospital because the councils are not actually putting out safety salt down on the road to stop people from sliding around. But also, I wonder whether the burghers of Waltham Forest are worried that because they are so authoritarian, that people might have thought they've just taken that extra step and gone, all right, let's just
fine.
Identifies Nazis, But maybe what we should also do is tell Nicolas Cage and the production unit there is such a place as Pinewood Studios where you can go and film to your heart's content, create a similar looking building as sort of AI or something, and put as many swastikas up as you like.
And it's also funny because, like you mentioned, they say Nazi era flags and symbols would not be publicly visible during the filming of its town hall, and they refused it because of the high level of sensitivity to far right iconography. First of all, wow, there's a high level of sensitivity towards swastikas. News there, folks. Like, really groundbreaking stuff there. But also, secondly, they refused to recognise the context which is this in, which, as I've just said, it's a Second World War military drama. It's not Nicolas Cage rocking up with a bunch of brown shirts saying, all right, Waltham Forest Town Hall, I've had enough of you not gritting the roads. I'm taking over and I'm staging a coup. It's quite pathetic. I think that, obviously they have the right to deny it. I'm not going to take that away from them. But if they, especially if the production team wanted to perhaps give Waltham Forest Town Hall some money, like I'm sure they probably have, in regards to actually getting access to using the building. In that case, they should have actually they should have known about the fact that it was going to be a Second World War documentary, and they should have thought in their head before, if they took any money, this might involve putting swastikas and other naughty symbols up. They should have thought of that beforehand.
You would have thought so. A couple of other stories to get to. Before we do that, though, talking about people being ridiculous and people being absolutely over the top with their crazy notions. Prime Minister's questions yesterday, the first one of the year. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, was there. Kemi Badenoch was there. We'll be playing you a few clips down the road from this one. But let's have a look at this first one, where he tried to make a bit of a jibe at reform.
We all agree, all of us here agree, I think most of us here agree, that NATO is the bedrock of our security. The future of Greenland is of fundamental importance to the future of the alliance. And I am sure that the Prime Minister agrees that it is essential for NATO leaders, including and especially the US, to meet. Will the Prime Minister call for an urgent meeting of NATO leaders?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she says she wants to hear about Ukraine. She's got 6 questions. She's not even asking a second question about what we did yesterday. She's got the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, in relation...
Sorry, can I help the Prime Minister? You don't need to worry about the responsibility of the questions of the opposition. That's the...
Mr. Speaker, NATO is the single most important and effective military alliance the world has ever seen. In the 18 months we've been in power, I've done everything within my ability to strengthen NATO. We had one of the strongest NATO meetings last year, the summit, where we had more members of NATO and more unity. When I arrived back to the House to make a statement, which of course she asked for, her position was I shouldn't have missed PMQs, I should have empty-chaired the NATO summit. That's how serious she is about NATO, Mr. Speaker.
How may not?
You didn't answer the question, Mr. Speaker. I asked him if he would call for an urgent meeting of NATO leaders. We can all see that the situation is moving rapidly.
See, once again, Keir Starmer asked a question. Even the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, said to him, do you mind answering the question? You don't have to actually, tell us why you're not answering the question, but it'd be very good if you actually wouldn't mind. Just before we go to that was not quite the clip I wanted, but we'll get to the real clip in a minute, which is where he makes a joke about Russia and reform. But before that, can we do a couple of super chats, Pooch, or is it easy to do? Yeah, here we go. Kat Sunter says, I effing love the show. Don't care about hot plants and clocks. I'm here for the news and the opinions. People need to get a grip. I think that's right. I mean, loving you as I do, you've got to take it a little less seriously in terms of what's going on behind me. One from Vicky Hatley. Thank you very much indeed. A super chat from her. You can do this, of course, by joining in with super chats. You know how to do that. Lena Thompson sends one in as well. Very good morning to you, Lena. Thank you. Lots and lots of you getting in touch because, let's face it, this is the only game in town. It's the place to be every single weekday morning from 7 until 9. It's coming up to 7:30. We'll be hearing the news from Edward Hughes very shortly. But before we do that, William Yarwood's still here from the Taxpayers Alliance. Let's have a quick look at what Keir Starmer tried to make a joke about with reform and Russia.
Can I begin by saying I hope all colleagues had a happy Christmas. It probably feels quite a long time ago now, but not for reform, of course, because today is the day that they celebrate Christmas in Russia. Mr. Speaker.
I mean, why would he even try and make a joke about that? Because, I mean, everybody knows that, if anybody's going to be more aligned to Russia and communism, it's actually Keir Starmer. It's not Nigel Farage. I mean, this is the guy who went to sort of, work camp in Czechoslovakia when he was training to be a politician.
Yeah. Also, the fact that Keir Starmer is still trying to make jokes is maybe it's his New Year's resolution. Maybe a joke will land this year, and his backbenchers will pretend to laugh. But it also just shows his direct obsession with reform in Russia, and that's Labour's favourite thing: reform Russia, bang that in as much as possible. But it's not sticking. So why does he think it's going to stick this year?
You're right.
So I think that Keir Starmer should cut out the jokes. Start actually answering questions and PMQs properly, because honestly, Mike, sometimes, I mean, I do watch it. I mean, I struggle through it because
it's pretty
awful, right? I mean, as much as I actually quite like Kemi's performances, and she gives Keir Starmer quite a kicking, and backbench MPs on the other side of the house give him a kicking. When Keir Starmer stops speaking and his own backbenchers stand up, it's all just like, would the Prime Minister agree with me that he's very handsome and clever and that red's an excellent colour? And he goes, oh, I'd completely agree with my right honourable friend about how wonderful I am. It's like, they're not questions. Like, you as a backbench MP, even if you're in government, should be there to hold your government to account and criticise them when you think they're wrong. But no, they read off paper, like shaking all the time, like really, really scared about what they're reading off the paper, when of course what they've got is a question given to them by Labour HQ or Downing Street themselves. Now, the Tories did this, of course, when they were in power as well. But look, I think PMQ is a bit of a farce. I mean, Farage himself, he was on Times Radio yesterday talking about how he thinks it's a bit of a farce and actually would reintroduce it being twice a week, actually, which I'm actually quite open to the idea of being, only if we get rid of questions which have been given to backbench MPs by Downing Street or by individual party HQs.
Yes, I think that's a good point. I think the point is that, they came into power promising transparency, accountability, and a different way of governing. And I'm afraid we haven't seen any of that. And what we do know from a piece in The Guardian a bit earlier in this week is that Morgan McSweeney, the so-called genius behind the throne of Downing Street, who's clearly not a genius at all, has come up with a new method of getting Keir Starmer back in touch with his voters, right? And it is the 3 E's. I don't know if you saw
Three E's.
The 3 E's, apparently emotion, empathy, and evidence.
Right. So how is Keir Starmer going to suddenly gain all those three things?
One, he doesn't have any emotion. He hasn't got any empathy at all, and he completely ignores evidence because he talks about stuff which doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, right. If he had any emotional empathy, he wouldn't have attempted to destroy family farms and slap small businesses with higher business rates, right? If he had any emotion, he wouldn't seemingly be so flippant about the crime that is being caused by illegal migration, right?
Yeah.
He hasn't got any of those things, and quite frankly, that's because he's just a sort of of robotic, bureaucratic functionary who, who doesn't have, of course, as you remember, doesn't have a favourite story, doesn't have a favourite piece of music, doesn't dream. There's just nothing going on inside of Keir Starmer's head, which actually, while I'm making a joke about it, should worry you a little bit, right? A politician without any sort of personality and essentially just a blank canvas on which Morgan McSweeney can draw his wildest dreams on. It's like, that's just not a good idea for transparency or democracy.
It's really not good, is it? Fantastic to see you, William. Thank you very much indeed. We've got a couple of other stories to get through, but we will get to them all. We're at the end of the first look at the papers this morning. It is coming up to 7:34. Don't forget, of course, we're going to be continuing with the news very shortly with Edward Hughes, our newsman. Hugh Edwards very much in the news, and what we'll hear from later is Edward Hughes's take on the story of finding this morning, waking up to find that Hugh Edwards is on the front page of The Sun because there's a big new programme being made starring Martin Clunes as Hugh Edwards. It's extraordinary stuff. William Yarwood from the Taxpayers Alliance, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Mike.
We'll see you very, very, very soon. It's a pretty nasty day out there. Do keep your eyes peeled for anything that you might wish to complain about, but hopefully not here. So many of you complaining about the clock, the plants, which side of the screen I'm looking at you from. It's quite extraordinary. People are asking on the YouTube chat, has Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen suddenly started watching the show? Because everybody's got some kind of interior decorating tip. Thank you very much indeed. The sound is clipping and activating a limited compressor on the audio interface or software, says MP Songs of Life. Sorry, no idea what you're talking about. Pooch is the man that deals with all the technical stuff, and if there's any problems, he will fix it, of course. How are the numbers going, says High Tech? They're going very well. We've currently got 8.4 thousand people watching. We'll get it up to 10,000 again before the end of the show. Cindy says, Mike, please make an after show for premium members. Well, there is an after show every single day on Substack, and we are, as we go through the motions, we're trying to figure out whether that goes onto YouTube. It always goes onto YouTube a couple of days later. Should it go onto YouTube Premium at the same time? I don't know. One from Armand, who says, very good morning from Hong Kong. Great show. Thank you very much indeed. So much going on. Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Hello, this is Edward Hughes, reading your news on the Mike Graham Show. UK news. We'll start in Westminster, where democracy continues to make a brave attempt at relevance. The Prime Minister faced questions in Parliament today on policy direction, leadership, and whether any of this is going according to plan. Downing Street insists the government is laser-focused, which is encouraging, though it remains unclear what the laser is pointed at. Opposition MPs say the country deserves better. The government says the opposition wouldn't cope. The public says they'd settle for functional. At least everyone agrees something must be done. No one agrees what that is. So that's nice. The economy. Now to the economy, still stubbornly refusing to turn a corner. Prices remain high, wages remain aspirational, and experts continue to appear on television to explain why this is actually very complicated and definitely not their fault. Markets reacted today by dipping, recovering, panicking slightly, and then announcing this was all priced in. Which is comforting, assuming you know what that means. If you don't worry. Neither do most people saying it. World news. To international affairs now, and in Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine continues. World leaders spent the day calling for unity, restraint and calm. Largely from behind lecterns, flags and very solid desks, talks around long-term security guarantees are ongoing, with diplomats describing discussions as frank, which means someone sighed heavily and asked for a break. Still, progress is being made. Allegedly, slowly, in theory. Middle East. In the Middle East, tensions remain high, prompting renewed calls for de-escalation. The United Nations has urged dialogue, restraint and respect for international law, again, while everyone involved nodded politely and then carried on exactly as before. Officials say the situation is complex, which is international relations for this will take a while. Elsewhere today, governments around the world say they are monitoring the situation closely. This means they are watching it unfold on multiple screens while preparing statements explaining why nothing could have been done sooner. Security services insist there is no immediate threat to the public. They also advise remaining vigilant. So calm but alert, relaxed but tense. British, basically. And finally, to recap, meetings were held, statements were issued, concerns were raised, nothing concluded. But rest assured, everything is being taken very seriously. I'm Edward Hughes, and that was the news. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again shortly, unless I find a fire alarm. That's the end of the news. By the way, I know Mike Graham says don't be a plank, but if nobody was a plank, then I'd be out of business. So my advice is, do be a plank. Laters, tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. He is, of course, the man of the moment, and we'll be hearing a statement from him later on about the big story this morning on the front page of The Sun, which is that there's a new drama being filmed by Channel 5 starring Martin Clunes as Hugh Edwards, the disgraced former BBC newsreader, who is still languishing in great luxury in a lovely house in South London in a place called Dulwich, which is worth about 5 or 6 million quid, living high on the hog on a very, very nice pension paid for by the licence fee payers, of course, and by the BBC, and who's still yet to return any of the money that he was paid extra for, even though he was found guilty of being a paedophile. Absolutely extraordinary. I don't like Edward Hughes. I don't get it. Brings down the rest of the show, says Midi. I think the Edward Hughes cartoon news is cheap. I must admit I turned the volume down, says Mick. Well, the other day everyone was saying turn the volume up. I bloody love the news with Hughes, says Gerard. There's an awful lot of very, very interesting comments about Edward Hughes. Loving the news, says Alison. A lot of people get it. Some people don't get it. But we're going to continue with Edward Hughes. But he'll be issuing a statement later on in the show about Hugh Edwards and about the situation that is going on. Lots of you getting in touch. One here from RJ. I have huge respect for Liz Truss. She's had a couple of kickings and keeps getting back up. She's proving a thorn in the side of the deep state. Kim says, I like everything about the set. It looks sophisticated. It's better than the talk studio. I'm also falling in love with Ed. Listen, a lot of people love Edward. Jan says, Edward Hughes, funny as anything. Keep up the good work. I love this AI smart ass. I think we can say that at this time of the day. One here from from Wayne. We have the plank of the week and the year in John Swinney, The Swindle. Yeah, well, we shall see. Americans wish you in England the best, says John. And do any of the Labour cabinet have an education? Well, you know, Rachel Reeves has been out and about on the TV shows this morning. Richard III, as we like to call her. Apparently, she's defended her decision on Good Morning Britain to scrap the 2-child limit on benefits, telling the people there at ITV that all children deserve a fulfilling life, regardless of however many brothers and sisters they have. Rachel Reeves said that many of the families receiving handouts, in her words, are working incredibly hard. Well, so presumably what she wants to do, a bit like some of the people in America who are pro-life, they don't want anyone to have an abortion. They want people to grow up and live a very, very healthy life before they then execute them in a death chamber. Rather the same as Rachel Reeves, who basically wants to let you have as many children as possible and allow people to pay you to have children from the state, from the taxpayers, and then when they grow up and they start making enough money of their own, then you tax them, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I think what we should do is get underway with a couple of other things that we do. I had a lovely message this morning when I woke up at about 5 o'clock from my daughter, Emma, who's in Dubai. She came over and visited me for Christmas and the New Year. And those of you who are regulars on the show will know that we've been trying to name the heron. Richard the Bird is my favourite one at the moment, as well as Eva Heron and Heron of Troy. But the heron has shown up in Dubai, believe it or not, which is where she works. And there it is. She sent me this picture this morning, and there is the heron, the bringer of good news, the harbinger of new beginnings. And so that has to be a bit of a good luck signal for me, because we're into day 4 of the new Mike Graham show, and I think we should all be very, very grateful to the heron that keeps visiting me in various different guises. It came to my home in London twice. It's now visited my daughter in Dubai. If you've got any heron action that you want to report to us, by all means do so. And I don't mean that kind of action. I want you to keep it clean. Let's do plank of the day, because this morning we've got more fury about British councils in a big page spread in the Daily Mail. Britain hits the skids as roads go ungritted. Fury at council inaction as A&Es are inundated with ice injuries. Apparently swamped hospitals across Britain were hit with an unprecedented surge in patients hurt by ice yesterday as councils faced fury over inadequate gritting. As the country braced itself for Storm Goretti snow bomb and 90-mile-per-hour gusts today and tomorrow, some emergency departments had to turn people away amid an influx of up to 50 patients an hour as sub-zero temperatures left swathes of the nation covered in a lethal sheet of ice. And the sun has got no calm before the storm. Get the gritters out for Goretti. Forecasters have issued amber danger to life warnings after cars, buses, lorries careered off roads, rail passengers branded platforms death traps. I mean, it can't be that difficult, surely, to deal with a cold snap, could it? I mean, for heaven's sake. Oh, by the way, this is a new thing we're going to do. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we want to get the numbers up as fast as we can. We've got, I think, 122,000 subscribers now. We'd like to get it to 200,000. So please go there and like the content and subscribe to it. It doesn't cost you any money, but it will help us massively to build this new breakfast show. And it might even be able to get us a few new things for the back wall. We're still waiting, by the way, for a neon sign. Which is taking an age to be made, but we're hopeful that we might get it before the end of this week, and it will go just over my shoulder. No, not there, there. It will go just over there, and it'll be a neon sign that says The Mike Graham Show. So, lots to get on with, loads and loads of things going on. Stephen Barrett is going to join us, the barrister who's got some interesting news about Chiltern Railways, who treated him disgracefully last week. We'll be talking to him coming up in the next hour. But right now, it's 7:45. Coming next, we're going to be talking to Mike Fairclough, the world's greatest teacher. Welcome back to the Mike Graham Show. Let's say a very good morning to Mike Fairclough. Mike, a very good morning to you, sir.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Not bad at all. Not bad at all.
Wondering why. Can I just say, I was digging the heron vibe. I've got a thing with herons as well. When I was a head teacher for like 19 years down in Eastbourne. I ran a farm as well. There was 120 acres of farmland opposite the school site, and I mean, I don't know whether you know this, but we had a herd of water buffalo on there and stuff like that. And made like let the children shoot guns and all sorts of stuff. And every time there were a pair of herons that kind of frequented the marsh, and every time they would arrive, I'd always feel like it was a sign. And there's something about living in. I know you're in London now, but there's something about living in.
I think we are back. Sorry about that. We just lost contact there for a moment. We're talking to Mike Fairclough, who, as he said, has been a head teacher for 19 years down in Eastbourne. And he used to do some amazing things with some of the kids there. We were talking about herons because, like I said, we've just been revisited by a heron, not in London today, but in Dubai, where my daughter lives, which is absolutely fascinating stuff. We'll bring you more from Mike Fairclough as we can get him back. Let me do a couple more messages. Here's one from somebody called Perry. Why is there a floating head when Edward Hughes does the news? It needs changing. Well, what's wrong with that? Aaron Doon. Edward Hughes, so laid back. Jan says, Edward Hughes, funny as anything, keep up the good work. Love this AI smart ass. Edward's getting better, but get rid of the weird AI face. It's creepy and giving the weirdo neighbour vibe. Yeah, well, so far, so good. Edward Hughes with the news is fantastic, says Nina. And then Eileen says, great show, Mike, love it. I definitely suspect that Edward Hughes is AI, though his use of punctuation is better today, says Moira. Yeah, well, I think we're back with Mike. Mike, I'm sorry about that. A little bit of a technical glitch there. Fascinating to hear you talk about herons. You were saying that when you would see this pair of herons, there was always some kind of a symbolic nature to it.
Well, I think it's for any sort of so I spent 2 weeks in London over the Christmas period. I was with my mother-in-law, and it was East London, And there's just there's not a lot of nature around. And coming back to Battle, which I know you used to live there as well, and the trees and the fields and all the rest of it, instantly I just felt more kind of connected, a freer kind of mind. You know, like the stars are incredible at night, stuff like that. And the first thing that, because we rocked up, we came back at it was like midnight or something, and the first thing I heard was the owl. And it's like, I'm not saying there's like a definite sort of cosmic message, but I just think it kind of makes you feel more connected. And it's really interesting seeing your kind of heron thing, because it just connected me back to the days when I was a head teacher running a herd of water buffalo, and then I would see these herons and I would always feel like it was aligning me to something kind of greater than myself. So interesting that you should have been into that.
No, I think so, because there's nothing superstitious about it. I think it's natural for people to gravitate towards it. And I think actually you can make a connection as well with the hopelessness of our politicians, who seem to spend most of their time in London, out of touch with reality, out of touch with ordinary people, out of touch with nature in many ways, don't you think?
Yeah. I'll tell you, with the exception of Rupert Lowe, who I had the pleasure of meeting down in Cornwall, it was at the beginning of December, and it was John Mappin actually, who you should definitely have on the show, because he's like amazing. He's the subject of my latest book, Sovereignty, and John has like during the shooting season he'll have so this is kind of going the opposite direction of like admiring birds to kind of killing them, but he has like pheasant shoots and stuff. And I went to one of these and met some phenomenal people, and met Rupert Lowe for the first time. And that is a man who is from the countryside. I mean, he is he's a shooting man, he's a farmer. He is someone who I believe really knows the score when it comes to what the sort of public opinion is. But it's interesting because, of course, he's not tethered to a specific party. I have met because I know he's had the ruck with Nigel Farage as well, who I have also met. I met him at Tintagel Castle. Again, he was a guest of John's. He wasn't shooting anything, but we had lunch together, and I just feel like, so when it comes down to politics, I think the main sort of issue for me is like whether whoever gets in, the same sort of stuff seems to happen. Is that the military industrial complex still do their mad stuff, the pharmaceutical industry still does its mad stuff. Everything kind of rolls on, and if you look at it, it's like we've got a civil service with permanent secretaries of the civil service who are there all the time, and I don't think that really reflects democracy. That's not actually democratic. Plus, we all so under the Conservatives in 2015, Britain was signed up to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 of them, and that locks us into all sorts of kind of crazy stuff like net zero. It leans us into sort of weird, sort of strange ideologies like the gender ideology stuff. It's very kind of heavily influences the censorship that happens at the moment, and I feel like what needs to happen. And I had a chat with Rupert Lowe about this, because he said, "What would you?" I said, what do you think about the civil service? I did ask Nigel as well, and he gave a very great answer. But I'm not going to share what he said, but they essentially, both of them had a very hard line about that, and felt like it was something that needed to be addressed. And I think it's something that doesn't get discussed. We look at the window dressing of politics, and it's just nonsense. It's just theatre, whilst underneath it is essentially a permanent government. And I know it's become a bit more acceptable to mention the deep state, and actually Liz Truss has talked about this. She said, and bear in mind she was a former prime minister, she said our deep state is older than the United States deep state. So that's for as long as there's this sort of nefarious sort of shadow underworld, hidden government. Well, it's not even really hidden if you think about the civil service. Then we're not really truly living in a democracy. That's my feeling.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we talk about it quite a lot on this show, and we will continue to do so because, you know, one of the things that I've always noted is when you get people coming into government who say, we're going to sweep away the civil service, we're going to have a bonfire of the quangos, we're going to get rid of all sorts of people. I mean, Dominic Cummings was the guy who was going to completely and utterly reform the civil service when he was working in Downing Street with Boris Johnson, and he wasn't able to do anything. He just couldn't get through it. And it turns out that now we've got even more civil servants working in Whitehall than we've ever had. And you're right to say that it's pretty much out in the open. I mean, there's a story in the papers today saying that Labour has basically halted elections in 22 different council areas coming up, and I think it'll affect you in East Sussex. West Sussex is going to be affected as well. I think Suffolk, but basically 22 council areas are being denied the right to hold an election. And I find it astonishing that when Keir Starmer was being interviewed last Sunday by Laura Kuenssberg, she didn't even ask him about it.
No, it's but because they're all part of the plan. I mean, you were referring to the BBC earlier, and rightly. Actually, no, that was I was watching it was your interview with Charlotte, the producer of this show, and you were talking about the BBC, and I thought that was really interesting. How I think you were making reference to watching. Like an old 80s.
Yes, it was Yes Prime Minister, wasn't it? The old show.
That was it. Yeah. And saying how it's always been the same that politicians can lean on the BBC.
Sorry, guys, we're having a bit of a glitch this morning. For some reason, the Gremlins have decided to come and visit. We're talking to Mike Fairclough. We're nearly finished with him, but he's saying some really interesting things about the state of play here in this country, where you've got the BBC, who are part of the establishment, where you've got civil servants who are continually undermining every single government department that they work in, making sure that nothing really gets done, nothing really gets changed. I mean, look at the state of the Home Office, look at the state of the Foreign Office, look at the state of the Defence Department, look at the state of the Health Service, the Department for Health, look at the state of what you might call DEFRA, the Department of the Environment. I mean, almost every single government department doesn't work properly. And sorry about this, Mike. The gremlin, the heron, has not helped us this morning for some reason.
No.
It's having a negative effect. But anyway, sorry, you were saying the BBC.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, the whole thing. So cancelling elections, which is what all dictatorships do, including Zelensky's dictatorship, in my view, with Ukraine. And also the assault on free speech. I mean, there's like 12,000 people a year being, 12,000 plus arrested for free speech, quote unquote, offences, and sent to prison. We now got, cancelling juries, etc. I mean, this has got all the hallmarks of a brutal dictatorship. I don't believe that it would be any different under the Conservatives, because, of course, we lived through again, just to mention the pandemic years, like the censorship industrial complex being rolled out massively under them. So I mean, look, I voted Reform in the last election. I will continue to vote. I've had a personal conversation with Nigel Farage. I like him, and with other Reform candidates who I believe are genuinely on side. I mean, there's less kind of career politicians, I think, within Reform than in the other parties. I also really like what Rupert Lowe's doing with creating an actual movement, a grassroots movement, because I think the thing that the state is most fearful of is actually the people. Yeah. And my personal view is that that's why they all want to send everyone off to war with Russia at the moment, because they're kind of like these pesky sort of dissidents who are waking up across all of the different classes, including the working class, and it's just a good way to kind of get rid of a lot of people. And it was interesting, you were mentioning the typical annual freak out about the ice and the snow in Britain. Which is happening like all over the place. I mean, as my wife was on a train a couple of days ago, and it was delayed because it had suddenly got frosty. And yet they think that they can send everyone to the front line in Ukraine in winter and have an actual, World War III. I mean, it would be absolutely hopeless. And they said, you'd have to have somewhere to warm up on the side. You'd have to have transgender toilets, of course, and all the rest of it. I think we've just been softened up to the point of ridiculousness, and plus it's the last thing that should be happening. But the main
We're back again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. This is the Mike Graham Show. It's coming up to very nearly 8 o'clock in the morning. We're talking to Mike Fairclough. We're nearly done. I've just got one more question to ask him when we get him back. For some reason, maybe we're getting hacked. You know, it could well be that we're being so successful right now that we're blowing everybody else out of the water. That it wouldn't. I mean, you know, and people say, "Oh, are you going to sound paranoid, Mike?" Actually, no, I'm not sounding paranoid because I've been hacked before. And now that we're an independent organisation, there might be others out there who are seeking to, in some way, interrupt our transmission. I wouldn't be surprised. Mike Fairclough's a man who talks an awful lot of sense. Mike, let me just finish up before we lose you again. Because you're a man that's dealt in many, many ways all your life with teaching younger children, older children. I mean, do you have any hope that the next generation, say, for example, from, say, I don't know, 18 down to 12, is seeing some of what you're describing and is understanding that, you know, something needs to change?
Yes, I do. So despite the best efforts of the education system and all of this kind of woke nonsense and everything, if you actually speak to children on the ground, teenagers, young people generally, I mean, they are waking up. I mean, the thing is, children have got naturally, they have... So they're very young children driven by imagination. They are also natural risk takers. They embrace change. They're full of gratitude and optimism, all of the wonderful things which eventually get sort of beaten out of them by the sort of adult world. But they're all there. And the thing is, this is the strange thing. It's like adversity and things getting difficult actually do make people try harder and wake up. This is the kind of strange thing. I've written about this regarding the hero's journey, the hero's quest, which I think which interestingly gets trigger warnings put on, like Homer's Odyssey, etc. Gets trigger warnings and all sorts of things which are about overcoming adversity. But actually, when we do face challenges and any sort of difficulty, we do tend to have sort of insights and awakenings. And my experience of talking with children and teenagers, etc., is that yes, there's immense help, because I also believe that the human spirit is much stronger and brighter and lighter than any of these dark forces. I mean, they're first of all, the government is incredibly unimaginative. Its brutality has been done so many times before, and it seriously underestimates the British spirit. I mean, there's a reason we won 2 world wars previously, and that we have it within us to be able to rise up. It's as John Mappin said, we're an 11th hour nation. We tend to rise up at 11:45, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Good. Well, listen, that's encouraging news. I think a lot of people will be encouraged by that. But you're absolutely right. You know, you never find out about yourself. You never find out about life. You never find out about anything unless you go and try and do something and maybe fail at it, and then recover, and then wake up, and then, you know, get up. And, you know, my situation has been that all my life. You know, I've been fired 5 times from all sorts of different jobs for one reason or another, and it's always turned out to be better afterwards, you know. So listen, I thank you very much, Mike. Sorry about the interruptions. Great to talk to you. Great to hear your philosophy of life. And tell us where we can get the John Mappin book, please, just before you go.
Right, so you can get that from Waterstones, Amazon, etc. It's about to be launched in America under Skyhorse as well. So that's with the same publisher that publishes President Donald Trump's work, Tucker Carlson's work, and Charlie Kirk's work.
Okay.
And then there's a big publisher that's taking it on in Eurasia as well in February. But for UK readers, they can find the book on Amazon, and it's called Sovereignty, John Mappin, The Restoration of Sanity, and it covers just I've said before, it's the book I'm the proudest of so far. It's my 8th work, and I'd be interested to hear what people think about it.
Yeah, brilliant. And we are going to get John on. I think we're seeking to do that even as we speak. So we'll speak to him soon as well. Mike, have a great day. Thank you very much indeed. Mike Fairclough there, teacher extraordinaire, philosopher, and author, of course, of a latest book about John Mappin, who we will speak to at some point coming up soon. What if the heron is a girl, says Cute Kittens? Yeah, I mean, it could well be. I don't know. I mean, I've no idea. A few glitches happen, says the Saint. Please do relax. Sound is back on, but it's out of sync, says Jane. Listen, we're doing the best we can. We're trying to fix everything as it happens. I mean, as I said before, and I said this yesterday, even when I was working inside that great big building at London Bridge, which was full of millions and millions of pounds of investment, you would go off air, and sometimes nobody could explain it. It's called technology and it's called glitches. So please do bear with us. How about this? Those who are okay should go out and help the council to grit the paths for the elderly, says ML. Please acknowledge Rupert, Mike, says Karen. Well, Rupert Lowe is somebody that I talk to on a regular basis. I've had him on my shows before. I'm sure I'll have him on my shows again. He got a bit upset with me the other weekend when I did a poll about who's likely to be the next Prime Minister. Not quite sure why, but there we are. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking about what's on the front pages again, because it's almost time to have a look at those. And, of course, the big story is nothing to do with Greenland. It's nothing to do with Venezuela. It is to do with Hugh Edwards, because Hugh Edwards is right back on the front page of The Sun this morning. It turns out Channel 5 is going to hire Martin Clunes to star as Hugh Edwards in a brand new drama about Hugh Edwards, the paedophile. I'm not quite sure who's going to want to watch that, but our man Edward Hughes with the news is very concerned about it, and he's got a statement that he's going to put out very, very shortly. We'll also run you through Plank of the Day. We're going to talk to Stephen Barrett as well, our favourite barrister, who's got an awful lot to say this morning, not least about Chiltern Railways, who had their security guards drag him out of Marylebone Station just over a week ago, and he's going to be now taking them on, I think, and he's going to be telling us all about it right here on the home of common sense, which is, of course, the one and only Mike Graham Show. We'll be back right after this.
Hello, this is Edward Hughes, reading your news on the Mike Graham Show. UK news. We'll start in Westminster, where democracy continues to make a brave attempt at relevance. The Prime Minister faced questions in Parliament today on policy direction, leadership, and whether any of this is going according to plan. Downing Street insists the government is laser-focused, which is encouraging, though it remains unclear what the laser is pointed at. Opposition MPs say the country deserves better. The government says the opposition wouldn't cope. The public says they'd settle for functional. At least everyone agrees something must be done. No one agrees what that is. So that's nice. The economy. Now to the economy, still stubbornly refusing to turn a corner. Prices remain high, wages remain aspirational, and experts continue to appear on television to explain why this is actually very complicated and definitely not their fault. Markets reacted today by dipping, recovering, panicking slightly, and then announcing this was all priced in. Which is comforting, assuming you know what that means. If you don't worry. Neither do most people saying it. World news. To international affairs now, and in Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine continues. World leaders spent the day calling for unity, restraint and calm, largely from behind lecterns, flags and very solid desks. Talks around long-term security guarantees are ongoing, with diplomats describing discussions as frank, which means someone sighed heavily and asked for a break. Still, progress is being made. Allegedly, slowly, in theory. Middle East. In the Middle East, tensions remain high, prompting renewed calls for de-escalation. The United Nations has urged dialogue, restraint and respect for international law, again, while everyone involved nodded politely and then carried on exactly as before. Officials say the situation is complex, which is international relations for this will take a while. Elsewhere today, governments around the world say they are monitoring the situation closely. This means they are watching it unfold on multiple screens while preparing statements explaining why nothing could have been done sooner. Security services insist there is no immediate threat to the public. They also advise remaining vigilant. So calm but alert, relaxed but tense, British, basically. And finally, to recap, meetings were held, statements were issued, concerns were raised, nothing concluded. But rest assured, everything is being taken very seriously. I'm Edward Hughes, and that was the news. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again shortly, unless I find a fire alarm. That's the end of the news. By the way, I know Mike Graham says don't be a plank, but if nobody was a plank, then I'd be out of business. So my advice is, do be a plank. Laters, tigers.
That's Edward Hughes with the news, a man that's got plenty to say, by the way, and he will have something to say about Hugh Edwards, who's on the front pages this morning. We'll be bringing you more on that in a moment. Lots and lots of you making some really interesting comments this morning. One from Truth Junkie, who says this, was there a PO box where we could send you a clock? Well, actually, we are putting a PO box together in order to get that done. So we will have that for you, hopefully sometime next week. Thank you for helping my depression, Mike. We love you, says David. Johnny says, Mike, can you say hello to my wife, please? She loves you. That's Johnny Solar 9813. Hello, Johnny Solar's wife. Very nice to hear from you. Mike has the same number of viewers as Sky News at the moment, says Armando. That's not very encouraging, is it? I thought we'd be doing better than that. Got to be AI. That's why Mike said they might or might not get rid of him. That's, of course, Edward Hughes. Edward Hughes' voice gives me the creeps, says Jackie. Well, you're not alone. The only good thing about Edward Hughes is that he's not actually texting anybody while he's doing his job, unlike Hugh Edwards, which was why he was fired. It's got to be AI, says Stephen. Yes, I agree the Edward Hughes animation isn't good, says Vivian. I don't actually know how to make it better. Mike, you need professionals there. I beg your pardon, we have many professionals here, and we are producing a very professional show. That's why it's beating everybody else in the ratings, I think you'll find. It is the most popular breakfast show currently in Britain. So if you're watching it today, you can count yourself as one of the very lucky few who have got the perspicacity to join in with what can only be described as the proper, real and only home of common sense. I love having Mike back. The cock-ups and glitches make the show even better, says Ian. Don't change anything. Well, this is why I keep saying to people, you know, no matter how expensive the operation is, no matter how ritzy the building is, no matter how many thousands of engineers you're paying millions of pounds to fix everything, things do go wrong. So please just bear with us, if you don't mind. So many of you like the idea of having more clocks. So many of you don't like the flowers behind us. You don't like the brick wall. We're getting, as I said, a neon sign, which is going to say the Mike Graham Show, which is going to be great. And here's from David. He says, there were some odd things happening with the sound and the transmission from Reform's meeting yesterday as well. Yeah, funnily enough, I heard that. Layla Cunningham's microphone sometimes didn't work. And you can't discount the fact, by the way, and I'm not trying to cause any kind of superstitious reaction here, you can't discount the fact that it may well be that there are people interfering because, you know, people with organisations which are asking questions and challenging people and are questioning the government, you know, they do get attacked by cyber criminals, and sometimes those cyber criminals are inside of the state. I'm not going to call it the deep state because I'm not sure that's quite the right term, but I'm not at all surprised to hear that some people who are thought to be on the outside of the establishment are quite often the subject of attacks, whether they be personal attacks that are made outside in the street or whether they are actually proper cyber attacks that are made inside of studios, inside of press conferences, inside of organisations. So don't be at all surprised. We live in very dangerous times, ladies and gentlemen, and I have to say that I do not trust anyone in the government to not harm people that they don't like in any way that they can do it. And of course, we will be bringing you news on that every single moment of the day. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to Stephen Barrett. But before we do that, coming up next, I'll run you through what's being said on the front pages. That's coming next. And there it is, the Mike Graham News Review. Look at this. The front page of The Sun is Look Who's Hugh. And it's a picture on the front page of Martin Clunes dressed up as Hugh Edwards. He's actually not as handsome as Hugh Edwards, and it says TV drama on a Sun investigation. Telly favourite Martin Clunes is to play disgraced BBC newsreader Hugh Edwards in a new two-part drama. The Channel 5 show will tell how the Sun exposed the pedo presenter's double life. Clunes, who's exactly the same age at 64, mimics Edwards' eyebrow raise, his slick grey hairstyle, and has nailed his accent. An insider said Martin felt it was an important story to tell. He was drawn to the fact that taking on a villain was a departure from his best-known roles. They've also got a piece on the front about Kevin Keegan, the legendary footballer for Liverpool, Newcastle and England, who is battling cancer. His family have revealed last night. He's 74 years of age. He's undergoing specialist treatment in hospital. Daily Mail goes with a story about fat jabs. You need to be on fat jabs for life. A study at Oxford University says millions of Britons who are taking weight loss jabs may need to stay on them for life because, unfortunately, if they go off them, they'll just put all the weight back on again. The injections now, household names such as Mounjaro and Ozempic, have been hailed as a breakthrough in obesity treatment. But a major Oxford University review suggests the benefits may be short-lived once the treatment ends. And I mean, I've always said, until you know precisely what the long-term effects of some of this stuff is, I think you'd have to be really, really careful as to what you would put into your body, you know? The Times front page goes with the UK joins in the pursuit of Putin's shadow fleet. And they've got a picture of a released video of the seizure of this Sofia tanker in the Caribbean and the Marinera in the North Atlantic. These are supposed to be Vladimir Putin's sort of shadow ships, which are floating around out there in the ether on the high seas. Many of them under the Russian flag now, but actually many of them involved in all sorts of nefarious activity. For example, the Marinera thought to have been involved in possibly shipping arms to Hamas in the Middle East from Venezuela and all of that. And one of the worst stories of the day, I think you'll find, is a diversity panel at Britain's biggest police force, i.e. the Metropolitan Police, overturned vetting refusals, which meant that rogue officers and staff who had committed rape, assault and drug offences were actually hired by the Metropolitan Police. One of the most shocking cases was that of a person called Cliff Mitchell, 26 years of age, a Metropolitan Police officer who was convicted of 13 rapes against 2 victims, one of whom was a child. Senior officers said he should never have been hired after he failed the vetting process. He was arrested in April 2017 after a complaint about a rape of a child. In August 2019, he was told no further action would be taken. He applied to join the force in 2020. His application was blocked. However, this was overturned by the vetting panel and he began his training in August 2021. And guess what the reason was that he managed to get through the vetting process despite being a rapist? Because he was black. And that's what the Metropolitan Police are now apparently doing. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Really, really incredible and ridiculous. Now, I think we need to hear from Edward Hughes, don't we? Edward Hughes has got a statement that he'd like to make about Hugh Edwards. Have a listen.
Hello, Tigers. This is Edward Hughes with a statement. I see the front page of The Sun is leading with a story about the Welsh newsreader Hugh Edwards. Despite the fact that I am a newsreader and Welsh, and I also like sending photos, but mainly of my red setter doggy called Angela, I wholeheartedly disassociate myself from Mr. Edwards' past actions. Please do not confuse us. However, I must say that the casting of Martin Clunes has further muddied the waters, as I too have massive ears. By the way, the Sun headline should have read, "Man behaving badly." This is the end of my statement. I will not be taking questions. This is Edward Hughes. And remember, despite all of the others out there, do be a plank.
Edward Hughes there, who disagrees with me when I say don't be a plank. Now, I'm delighted to say, for the first time on the brand new Mike Graham show, it is time to speak to one of our favourite barristers of all time. It is the one and only Mr. Stephen Barrett. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you.
Very, very nice to see you. Now, I'm excited to talk to you for all sorts of reasons, not least because last night you put out a tweet about the West Midlands Police. How is the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police still in his job after appearing before various different parliamentary committees, lying to them, lying to various MPs at different times about the whole situation regarding banning Israeli fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv in early November of last year? But you know, the police stories are worse and worse with every day. Today we've got a story of a guy who was a rapist, a child rapist, who was refused entry to the Metropolitan Police, but then was later admitted on the grounds that he fitted the diversity procedure, for heaven's sake.
It's such a betrayal of our good officers. And it's so easy to forget that we do actually have some good officers left. going out on this cold morning to do real policing, to keep us actually safe, and, you know, do the hard work that gets them almost no credit now, because of course they only get credit if they tick diversity boxes or they achieve some sort of lefty sort of, you know, tick box. And it's just a betrayal of good officers that the police force is in this way. It's almost entirely down to the College of Policing. So this is a woke organization which teaches them that they will only succeed in life, they will only advance in their career if they parrot left-wing propaganda. And you can see it in the chief constable of Westminster Police is actually a gift to me, because he's so obviously not competent. He's so obviously really quite dim. That he only got his job because he parrots these mantras. And of course, this has now come to bite him on the bottom, because whilst believing in this left-wing, you know, hierarchy of identity that puts Muslims above Jews and you know, all of this nonsense it's what has got him to this position. But he has lied to Parliament and he ought to go. And if we don't get rid of at least him, it really ought to be the entire leadership of the West Midlands, to be perfectly honest, Mike. But if we don't get rid of at least him, then we are a completely spineless and pathetic nation. And our Home Secretary sits there. I mean, don't you remember, it was only a couple of months ago, she was trying to talk tough. She promised to stop illegal migration, Mike. She's done really well at that, obviously. But, you know, these people are just words and nonsense and mantras. And the sad reality for lefties out there is that they come crashing headfirst into reality. We're not an ideology. We are a country, and we have specific needs right now, which is at the moment law and order and protecting the border. And they can't do either. And letting a child rapist into the police force on ideological grounds just proves how utterly rotten they are.
It absolutely does. And you and I have had many conversations about this, but I do quite often ask the question, how could we have let this happen? Because in a way, I wonder whether some of our lackadaisical attitudes have been to blame for allowing these people to take over the establishment, for allowing them to kind of hoodwink all of us into thinking that they were responsible individuals with our best interests at heart, when they clearly were not, when they were pushing an agenda which we didn't even know about.
Well, there's two things to say on that. The first is that we are all guilty. So I hold my hand up too. It didn't quite come into shot, but I physically did it. We all got a bit comfortable. We all got a bit sort of lazy, thinking that our country was just well run and therefore we could get on with our private lives and what we were doing with what we, you know, how we got on, when our next holiday is, you know, whether we're going to have kids, how we're going to, you know, do up the flat, all sorts of things that just came in to occupy our life and distracted us. And we all believe the sort of soporific Tony Blair duvet style lie that sort of drifted over us, that everything is fine, the professionals are in charge, they know what they're doing. And the second one is probably going to get me in more trouble, but is also true, is that the Conservative Party bought into all this from 2010 onwards. So the College of Policing, you know, is really something that anybody with an ounce of intelligence should have spotted was going to lead to rot in the police force. And it has led to rot in the police force, and now our police force is completely rotten. But really, you don't need gift of magical foresight or prophecy to know that was going to happen. And instead of noticing that, the Conservative Party became complicit in sort of maintaining the bureaucracy, maintaining the status quo, pretending that DEI is a good idea, pretending that critical race theory actually makes sense rather than being sort of completely irrational nonsense. You know, we have to accept that both parties have a role to play. Yes, Labour started the ball rolling, but the Conservative Party took it up with glee to maintain this sort of nonsense. And that's how we've ended up where we are, effectively 30 years of an ideology. We started off with a really prosperous, wealthy country, which allowed us to ignore everything and not necessarily pay attention. And 30 years later, we're bankrupt. Everything is broken. We have almost no law and order, and our police officers are lying to Parliament.
Yes, and I mean that is one tragedy that we're having to face. You're getting a lot of love on the show at the moment. I love Stephen; he's absolutely spot on. I'm glad he's okay after his ordeal, which we'll come on to in a moment. Says Benita. Let me play you a little clip though, because one of the things that unfortunately is a byproduct of the failings of the police force and the failings of the state is that now the government is continuing its kind of persecution of soldiers, people who were put in danger, who were supposed to fight on behalf of the state, particularly in Northern Ireland. And yesterday, Kemi Badenoch questioned Keir Starmer about his, love and wish to send boots on the ground, British boots on the ground to Ukraine, while at the same time prosecuting people who had fought against the IRA. Have a look at this.
Isn't just about money. If the Prime Minister is deploying troops to Ukraine, those troops need to know that we have their backs. Yeah. Last week, 7 former SAS commanders, 7 former SAS commanders warned that Labour's Northern Ireland Troubles Bill will wreck our special forces. Yeah. Not me, that's the SAS. In November, 9 retired 4-star generals warned that his bill was a direct threat to national security. Yeah. And even his own Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner has said our veterans are being treated worse than terrorists. So, Mr. Speaker, is it not madness to be putting veterans in the dock for serving their country at the same time he is deploying today's soldiers into Ukraine?
Mr. Speaker, that was embarrassing. She said that Ben Wallace was talking about all government. They were in power for 14 years and they hollowed out our armed forces. Copyright Ben Wallace. Secondly, she talks about the shadow cabinet. She has in her shadow cabinet a shadow attorney general who is advising Abramovich at the same time as we are imposing sanctions on Russia and trying to use that money to support Ukraine. How can someone sit in her shadow cabinet advising someone trying to escape sanctions and pretend that their policy is to support us on sanctions? And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to Northern Ireland, they are the party that gave immunity to IRA terrorists, terrorists who killed British soldiers. Their flawed act was struck down by the courts, which left our veterans with no legal protection whatsoever. We're introducing a fair and transparent process with a package of rights and protections for our veterans. And Mr. Speaker, there is no equivalence between our armed forces who fought bravely in Northern Ireland and terrorist groups. And if the Leader of the Opposition wants to go back, if her position is, to their old flawed legislation and give immunity to the IRA, she should stand up now and say so.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by talking about the Shadow Attorney General. Yes.
Got poor old Richard III there, Rachel Reeves, looking a bit miserable, wasn't she? I mean, you could see a little brain cogs going round thinking, is there a way I can tax IRA terrorists who have been released from prison? There must be a way, surely. But, it is shameful, isn't it, that these politicians are so duplicitous and so now openly hypocritical. That on the one hand, Keir Starmer thinks there's nothing wrong with offering to send young men and probably women as well, and possibly a few non-binary individuals to Ukraine to keep the peace, while at the same time prosecuting people who have fought for their country.
It's an absolute betrayal of our servicemen. And there's no way round that. It's grotesque. It upsets decent people like you and me, Mike.
Yeah.
But let's face it, the government is not composed of decent people. So let's try and talk a language they might have a chance of understanding. It's incredibly stupid. If you prosecute the people who fight in your defense, you will not have anybody to fight in your defense. It really is that simple. It's not rocket science. It's that simple. And I'd like to point out that the attack on the Shadow Attorney General, which is David Wolfson, is deliberately because he is he's an incredibly expensive barrister, Mike. He's way beyond my pay grade. He's one of the few lawyers. I don't like doing this, Mike, because I'm terribly proud. But there's a tiny handful of lawyers I might concede are better lawyers than me. And David Wolfson is in that small group. And he is for free representing our veterans against the government. And that's why they hate him, because they are absolutely frit that he's going to rip them to shreds in the Supreme Court and make a complete joke about them. So they're desperate to sort of throw anything at him. I mean, the fact that Shamima Begum's lawyer is the current Attorney General for the Labour Party is apparently not to be noticed, but apparently representing Roman Abramovich in Jersey on a totally unrelated case is somehow bad. Oh, and by the way, Labour, that's racist, okay? Just because he's a Russian doesn't make him bad. That's what we call racism.
Right.
You remember that that's a bad thing, don't you? I mean, they're just utter hypocrites, Mike. But the simple truth, just to bring it absolutely back to home, is that we will not have brave men, and it is men, who fight and risk their lives or give their lives in our defense, in defense of this nation, if we prosecute them. It's one of the reasons I get very upset with the sort of it's become very fashionable to be deranged against Mr. Trump. And I get very, very upset because young American men have given their lives to protect these islands. So whoever America elects as their president, we respect them because of that sacrifice. And they stand willing to do that again. So we respect them and we remain their friends and allies, regardless of what you think about the current incumbent in any office.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Let's finish up with Chiltern Railways, because you were the unfortunate recipient of what can only be described as a very, very overzealous and over-aggressive security detail, which is, again, one of the things that seems to have grown up in this country over the course of the past few years, because it's almost like, you know, if you haven't got a private militia and you're running a transport company, you know, you're nowhere, right? So they've hired all these rather dodgy characters who attacked you for apparently no reason at all in Marylebone Station one night, dragging you out literally by your wrists on the floor, making you bleed, giving you bruises. Tell us what the latest situation is.
Well, they have done absolutely nothing. They haven't bothered to apologise, which strikes me as the first thing that you do. They say that they are conducting an investigation. Goodness knows what they are investigating. I haven't asked them to investigate anything. I haven't made a complaint to them. I'm pursuing legal action against them instead, because I think that's what will teach the boss. Ultimately, yes, I was the victim of overzealous young men who didn't know what they were doing and were grotesquely overreacted to the fact that all my crime, Mike, was daring to question the need for barriers and crowd control. You know how it is with authoritarians. If you dare to question them, then of course you're instantly, you know, untermensch, and you must be dealt with. But ultimately, I don't really blame the sort of tooled up, muscular young men. I blame the people who put them in place in a very civilized, or what ought to be a very civilized space. You know, this is Marylebone railway station. I mean, I don't mean to be snobby, but we've always looked down on places like Waterloo and Paddington, which are huge, as you know. You know, we're little old Marylebone. We used to have our artisanal cheese shop. You know, this is not. We've got a Hotel Chocolat. You know, we're not the sort of place where this type of thing ought to happen. And the sheer ridiculousness that I was wearing red cords, a Christmas jumper, carrying a tweed coat, and a Waitrose bag for life. I mean, honestly, they wouldn't do this to any criminal, would they? And they're going to. This is what they're going to run headfirst into: is what type of person would you have dragged out of Marylebone? And the only answer is a respectable, middle-aged, middle-class man, because we are considered to be, you know, the only people worthy of policing. And the great irony, Mike, is that the last tweet I sent before I was physically dragged out was that they only police the law-abiding.
Yes. It's absolutely true, though. It is true, because that's exactly what is going on up and down the country. You know, how many videos have we seen of characters wandering into a local shop, whether it's a co-op or a Waitrose? I think there was a Waitrose one involved, and filling up a rucksack with bottle after bottle after bottle of alcohol while being watched by a security guard. And if you or I attempted to leave without paying for something, you'd be given the sort of head down the toilet treatment, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, this is the absolute absurdity, that they will only police people like you and me because they know that we're decent people who won't fight back. And that's at the nub of it. And, you know, Rob Jenrick did that brilliant video highlighting, again, how they don't stop fare evaders. I dare say Marylebone doesn't stop fare evaders. I got a nice message from a friend who is respectable, but who said that the day after, they didn't do anything to me. I just waved at them as I ran past. So he just defied them and ran past the barriers. But of course, because I had the stupidity to try and reason and debate with them, to try and engage. And all I said was, these barriers are ridiculous. You're a clown. And then when he said, you can't travel today, I said, well, I've got a valid ticket. And I went over to try and talk to somebody more senior. That was my crime, trying to talk to someone more senior. And I think, Mike, that is human nature as well, because when a human abuses their power, which is what this is, they instantly feel shame. And he was probably terribly worried that I was about to expose him as having abused his power. So I had to be expelled from the station. What I then did was waited outside for 20 minutes because I just wasn't going to admit that I'd done anything wrong. And eventually the station manager comes out and eventually we have a lovely chat. I find out he's got 4 children and 6 grandchildren. And he then eventually lets me travel. Of course he does, because I'm a decent human being. And I get on the train and, you know, that's how life ought to be. But instead, I am going after Chiltern Railway and the bosses and the management because I don't want this to happen to anyone else. You know, the simple random fact is they picked me and they didn't have a clue who I was. But because I've got a mild platform, I'm at least able to do something about them. A lot of people would be utterly powerless. Most people, because they're decent people, would feel shame and worry that they'd done something wrong. And of course, our first reaction is to worry that we did something wrong. But this is just not on. This is not how we behave in this country. They wouldn't do it to criminals. They wouldn't do it to violent thugs. They only do it to respectable middle-aged people who they think won't fight back. You know, what's next? A little old lady dragged out of Marylebone. Is that the next step?
Yes. And what they did, let's face it, was illegal, you know, unlawful, whichever way you wish to describe it. And these petty, small-minded security staff, and you're being very, I think, magnanimous to say that they probably just didn't really think before they acted. You know, they should be hauled over the coals. They should be given proper instruction as to what they are legally allowed to do and what they are legally not allowed to do. And absolutely out of the question is physical violence against paying members of the public. I mean, that's the other thing that outraged me when I saw your video that night, was that, you know, you've actually paid to travel on a company train for which they are now dragging you out of the station for no reason whatsoever. It's just extraordinary.
And I complied. I mean, I was in the stupid queue. Well, one of the queues. You know, there were 3 queues. You didn't actually know which queue was the right queue. I mean, of course, these petty tyrants never actually tell you what you're supposed to do.
No.
I was in one of the queues, so I was actually complying. My crime was the audacity to say that this is ridiculous. How dare I question them? How dare I, you know, not bow down to the superiority of their crowd control measures, which are completely unnecessary on a Sunday night, as their rather charming station manager confirmed to me. You know, so they're not going to have a leg to stand on. This investigation. I mean, this desperate attempt to mark their own homework and find themselves innocent is just going to be absolutely risible. What's going to happen in a few weeks' time? They're going to come out and say, "What, we think Mr. Barrett was a terrorist." I mean, what are they actually going to say? It's just going to be. And by the way, I'm highly litigious, Chiltern Railway, so I will sue for defamation of character. So, you know, you've already physically harmed me. You're not allowed to just slag me off.
Right.
So the whole thing is absurd. If they had any sense, they'd just apologize, agree to make a donation to charity, and that this wouldn't happen again. But at the moment, you know, we're in this complete sort of impasse where I actually don't feel able to, and this probably sounds pathetic, snowflakey, wet, weak, but I don't really feel able to use Marylebone. So I had to go in for some filming yesterday and I just avoided it. I got off the early stop, walked to an underground station, underground into London, underground out of London, walked back. And because of snowy conditions, I had to wait quite a long time for a train. So, you know, more for me. But I just don't feel comfortable using Marylebone.
No, of course. And that is not at all, it's not at all snowflakey, you know, because what happened to you was pretty traumatic. I mean, I could see that you were pretty upset on the night when you made the video, and anybody, if you weren't a lawyer yourself, any lawyer would go, this man has been harmed, this man has been irreparably, you know, damaged and he needs compensation. I think you should take him to the bloody cleaners, quite frankly, and I hope you do. Let me finish up with just a quick question about the Chagos Islands, because the House of Lords, which sometimes occasionally reminds us that it's still a decent and democratic organisation, has kind of thrown the Chagos Islands deal up into the air and has caused quite a bit of consternation for Starmer and Hermer, or Harmer, as I like to call him. Let's have a look at Ross Kempsell, who was talking yesterday outside Parliament with some Chagosians.
Starmer, we have a message for you. You underestimated the Chagosian people. You came for the Chagos Islands, British Indian Ocean territory, and you underestimated the opposition that there is, both amongst the Chagosian community in Britain and around the world, and indeed across the whole UK, that are rejecting this deal. Bad for security, bad for British taxpayers, but worst of all, most outrageously of all, terrible for the rights of the Chagosian people, who are expressing here today that they wish to remain British. Chagos is the cause of the moment. As the world becomes more dangerous, more fractured, it's time to stand up for security and self-determination. The self-determination of the Chagosian people will be respected. And that's why we call on this government to throw out this deal. Undo this deal, this unfair deal. And Keir Starmer should know, whatever government comes next in the UK, they will reverse this deal. Keir Starmer, you underestimated Misley. You underestimated the First Minister of the Chagos Island government in exile, which is the result of this deal. And together in Parliament, in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, across all parties, we'll continue to fight against this deal. Scrap the Chagos deal. Scrap it.
Chagos deal. Scrap the Chagos deal. Chagos.
And I wonder whether there might be some truth in that, and they have to scrap the Chagos deal, given what's going on now in the rest of the world.
I seriously hope that they have to scrap the Chagos. I don't like to use the word deal. It's a betrayal. That's what it is. And the sheer absurdity of Keir Starmer twisting his little knickers and complaining about Donald Trump and Greenland. When, oh no, Mr. Trump might do to Greenland what we've already done to the Chagos Islanders. I mean, the sheer hypocrisy of that is absolutely off the charts. And at a certain point, Mike, we're going to investigate this. And at a certain point, we're going to question how Mauritius was advised by a friend of Keir Starmer, how the Attorney General is a friend of Keir Starmer, how advice was given to Cabinet that there is a legally binding need to give away the Chagos Island. Just let me be absolutely clear to your viewers, Mike. There is absolutely no legally binding need to give away the Chagos Islands at all. That court has no jurisdiction to order us to give away any territory at all, including the Chagos Islands. So the idea that it was going to make some future judgment is simply nonsense. It is at best stupid. That is the best you can say about our current Attorney General, is that he is at best an idiot. That is the highest honour you can bestow upon him. Chagos did not need to be given away. It's strategically vital. Their advisor on national security went on the television to say, oh, they're just some atolls. They're not terribly relevant, which again, I consider to be at best stupid. But I do think that this deal, hopefully Starmer will go and this deal will go, because any incoming Labour replacement will realise how incredibly stupid this is. We can't afford it, Mike. We're having to give away billions of pounds, and what they're doing, I don't know, again, if your viewers know this, but they're characterising that money. So we're going to give away money we don't have with the islands that we need, betraying the people who should live there, and we're going to characterise that money as defence spending. So if he starts talking, or Labour start talking about increasing defence spending, what they mean is we've spent a lot of money to give away the strategically vital islands that we now don't have. This has got China's grubby little mitts all over it, and it's going to end up, in my view, Mike, in some sort of investigation and possible future trial. as far as I'm concerned. We've got so lazy as a country that it's almost become impossible to sort of mention certain words or consider that we might be worth respecting or taking seriously. But we are a noble country, and people do not get to do this to us. They do not get to nick our land, steal our money, and betray citizens of our great diverse community. Again, look at the Chagos Islanders. They would have this ridiculous idea that we're some sort of monolithic entity. Those Chagos Islanders have lived here for decades and decades and decades. Loads of them, Mike, work at Gatwick, which is personally my belief is that that's one of the reasons Gatwick is one of the nicer airports. And I live quite close to Heathrow, and I will deliberately not go to Heathrow if I can go to Gatwick. Certainly when my child was a lot younger, because they're just so welcoming and so lovely, and it's a nice place. How can we betray these people? And Lord Kempsall, you're right to focus on him. He's done an absolutely outstanding job on this. And it's the Chagos Islanders, bless them, there aren't many of them, obviously, so they can't, they feel like they couldn't make much of a noise. But now they've got this government in exile. They've got a real they're on the good foot. It's another place like I don't know if you've covered it yet, Mike, and I need to do more on getting the message out about Somaliland, which is another incredibly decent place. People who have dragged themselves up by their own bootstraps to democracy and a successful capitalist society. So, of course, the left-wing establishment hates them, and they want to sort of pair them with Somalia. And they don't want to be with Somalia because Somalia has committed certain genocides against them. And they would, and I mean, you call me magnanimous, but I mean, talk about magnanimous. Somaliland's not talking about reparations or invading Somalia. It's just saying, could we please kindly leave them? Could they please kindly stay over there and we'll stay over here? Thank you very much. And, these are the decent people around the world. And everything that the left says is now a lie, because what Labour is planning is colonialism. Absolutely straightforward. They may as well have a twirly handlebar moustache and a Victorian hat on, because this is what they're doing. It's old style imperialism, but it's imperialism to the detriment of our country, which is the opposite of Mr. Trump. At least Mr. Trump is trying to benefit his country. I mean, this is just absolutely going to wound our country. It gives away vital defense infrastructure and weakens us. It weakens us because we can't afford the money, and it betrays the Chagos Islanders. Chagos is an absolute disgrace. If I could, I just stand on top of buildings yelling Chagos all the time, because I worry people still haven't got it, that this is outrageous. Because you wouldn't imagine that a British government of any type would do this. I've got friends who are lefties, and so I always worry that you and I share a mutual friend in Baroness Fox, and these are incredibly impressive people who are left wing. But so you would imagine that a left wing government would do things I disagreed with. Of course, that's absolutely natural. But you wouldn't imagine that a Labour government would betray our country, which is what it's doing.
You really wouldn't. Stephen, absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking so much time. You've been getting an awful lot of praise, including being labelled a handsome barrister. What a handsome barrister, says Vivian. Somebody said that you could be one of the three musketeers. I don't know whether you'd choose to be D'Artagnan. Another one said that actually on the Richard III scale, you're coming in a close second to Rachel Reeves. So, you've been absolutely brilliant. We must get you on every week, I think, to talk through everything that's going on. And good luck with your case against Chiltern Railways, who will, of course, at some point or other end up on Plank of the Week. We'd like to get you on that as well. Stephen Barrett, brilliant to talk to you. Thank you so much. We will see you very, very soon. What an absolute gentleman Stephen Barrett is. Imagine having to be put through that terrible ordeal by a load of, what can only be described as Stasi-like security guards. This from David. He says, Mike, I work security and I'm ex-army and can't get a job because they are just hiring non-English speaking guys, which should not be allowed. They should have to be able to speak our language. It is crazy. This one from High Tech, the great Stephen Barrett is winning the Richard III lookalike competition. What he says makes so much sense and a fantastic guest to have on. Love Stephen Barrett, says Anne-Marie. Stephen Barrett, top man, says man from Kernow. Yay, Stephen Barrett. I mean, so much praise coming in. Now, we've got to speak to Andrew Allison, I think, coming up very shortly. Just before that, I think it's time, is it not, to check in with Edward Hughes, our man with the news.
Hello, this is Edward Hughes, reading your news on the Mike Graham Show. UK news. We'll start in Westminster, where democracy continues to make a brave attempt at relevance. The Prime Minister faced questions in Parliament today on policy direction, leadership, and whether any of this is going according to plan. Downing Street insists the government is laser-focused, which is encouraging, though it remains unclear what the laser is pointed at. Opposition MPs say the country deserves better. The government says the opposition wouldn't cope. The public says they'd settle for functional. At least everyone agrees something must be done. No one agrees what that is. So that's nice. The economy. Now to the economy, still stubbornly refusing to turn a corner. Prices remain high, wages remain aspirational, and experts continue to appear on television to explain why this is actually very complicated and definitely not their fault. Markets reacted today by dipping, recovering, panicking slightly, and then announcing this was all priced in. Which is comforting, assuming you know what that means. If you don't worry. Neither do most people saying it. World news. To international affairs now, and in Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine continues. World leaders spent the day calling for unity, restraint and calm, largely from behind lecterns, flags and very solid desks. Talks around long-term security guarantees are ongoing, with diplomats describing discussions as frank, which means someone sighed heavily and asked for a break. Still, progress is being made. Allegedly, slowly, in theory. Middle East. In the Middle East, tensions remain high, prompting renewed calls for de-escalation. The United Nations has urged dialogue, restraint and respect for international law, again, while everyone involved nodded politely and then carried on exactly as before. Officials say the situation is complex, which is international relations for this will take a while. Elsewhere today, governments around the world say they are monitoring the situation closely. This means they are watching it unfold on...
Yeah, sorry. Edward, shut up. It's too long. The news is too long. People are complaining. You know, they don't want it on this long. You know, you've got to be shorter. You've got to be more brevity, more straight to the point. Stop rambling on. You're obviously scrolling through your phone while you're reading it. I'm not having that. We need the news to be shorter, to be brighter, to be shorter, to be sharper. This possibly is the tweet of the day or the message of the day from Mr. Fish and Chips OBE. Hopefully Stephen Barrister doesn't end up under Leicester car park. Unbelievable stuff. Now, coming up, we're going to be speaking to Andrew Allison, another very sensible young man who's going to give us his take on the state of play right now. Just before that, though, we've been talking about law and order today and the terrible state of the Metropolitan Police, who it turns out have been allowing people to be allowed into the Metropolitan Police despite the fact that they've got convictions for rape, convictions for assault, convictions for all manner of criminality, because they suit the diversity brigade, who want to bring them in because they happen to be from an ethnic minority. One particular individual was a child rapist, but managed to become a police officer. Now, here's something that will get you going. And this is a story about a man in Oxford who thinks that because he lived in Japan once, banging wooden sticks together helps stop neighbourhood crime. This guy's actually a counsellor. I don't know if we've got the video of that. Have we? No, we haven't. But I mean, for heaven's sake, don't give them any ideas. Because the video itself shows him literally walking around banging sticks together like that. And they're not even, you know, like magic sticks. They're like literally look like planks that you get from Wix or something. Unbelievable. Anyway, let's talk to Andrew Allison, who's been waiting very patiently for us. He's here with us. Andrew, very good morning to you. Welcome to the brand new Mike Graham Show.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's an absolute pleasure to be on. Thank you for asking me.
Not at all. Tell us what you make of the state of the union, as it were, in January 2026. You know, we saw Keir Starmer yesterday getting up in Parliament, not answering questions at Prime Minister's questions, being his usual, you know, opaque self. I'm not looking forward to 2026, I have to say. I don't trust this government. I know that times are going to get tougher. They keep telling us that we're going to feel richer soon, but I don't see it.
I just didn't bother saying Happy New Year to people this year, Mike, because I don't think it's going to be a particularly happy New Year. You've covered some of the stories this morning. And the Chagos thing is an absolute betrayal of this country. It's a betrayal of the Chagossians as well. But I mean, that's I wouldn't say the least of our worries, but we've got the economy, which I think is heading for one big crash. I think we could end up with a new prime minister, hopefully by the end of this year. But then you've got to be careful for who you wish for. I mean, it could be Ed Miliband, for goodness sake.
Oh,
I mean, Ed
God.
Miliband as prime minister. I mean, that would be dreadful. I can't see Rachel Reeves being imposed, but I can see her or another chancellor, someone who replaces her, going cap in hand to the IMF for a bailout. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly great year politically.
No, it really isn't. And I mean, the problem is that also today, hidden away in one of the sort of left-hand pages of the Daily Mail, 22 different areas of councils in May are not going to be holding elections. I mean, nobody seems to be getting bothered by this. I mean, the sort of the mainstream media interviewers don't seem to be asking the government the question as to why they're doing that.
When elections were cancelled last year, we were given reasons for it. It was very last minute, but you could understand some of the reasons, such as there's going to be local government reorganisation, and then next year, as in now, 2026, there will be proper elections. But this just seems to be going on, and we know the reason why. The Labour Party does not want elections to take place because it knows that Reform UK is going to do well. And it just simply wants to prevent Reform UK councillors from being elected. And that can be the only reason. I mean, and saying to councillors, well, you can postpone elections that you're likely to lose. You can postpone them if you want to. Well, what are they going to say? Oh, well, yeah, let's postpone them for another year and see what happens. It's an absolute betrayal of democracy, and anyone should be able to see that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And surely there must be at some point or other the Electoral Commission acting here, where they say, actually, you can't just postpone them because you don't fancy doing them. You know, you have to have a decent reason. I mean, it was this Labour government that wanted to sort of coagulate various different local authorities and to change the way that they ran. And you can't then say after that, well, because we're changing the way it runs, this is not the time to do it, so we're just not going to bother having an election. It seems mad to me.
You could perhaps get away with postponing elections for a year, Mike, which and because of local government reorganisation, I think you can probably get away with that. I think to a certain extent the government did get away with that last year, but you just can't keep on doing this indefinitely. But I seem to remember that the Electoral Commission did say something and did make some sort of criticism. I think that was between Christmas and New Year, or maybe just before Christmas. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what they said, but I think there was some criticism from the Electoral Commission about the way the government's handling this.
Right. Final question for you on the West Midlands Police. I think we've been talking about it quite a lot this morning, but the state of play in Birmingham alone just seems to me to be extraordinary. You know, we've now got calls from Kemi Badenoch for him to resign, the chief constable, or for him to be sacked. Obviously appointed by Labour, probably, so that you know, the government doesn't seem to be too in much of a hurry to get rid of him. But again, you know, the politicisation of the police force in this country has gone way too far, hasn't it?
Yeah, it most certainly has, and credit also to Nick Timothy, the Conservative MP, for really continuing with this campaign to get to the truth. And now finally we are getting to the truth. I think resignation is too good for this chief constable. I really think that he should be fired, and the Home Secretary does have the power to fire him, and she should use it. But of course, it's not just him, it's also the senior leadership team around him who've allowed this to continue. There basically needs to be a clear out of senior police officers in the West Midlands. And I think that's the only way that those people who live in the West Midlands can have any confidence in the police, because this has been an utter disgrace. They have lied and lied and lied. And normally they will get away with it. This time they haven't. Thank God they haven't. But we really do need some firings now.
Yes, because you do have to wonder, and this question was being asked yesterday by a couple of people, what else have they been lying about? You know, how else have they been comporting themselves over the course of the last several years in a part of Birmingham which appears to have been entirely captured by the Muslim community, and where whatever they say goes?
Yeah, exactly. And this rise of sectarian politics, Mike, is what really troubles me. I mean, you know, we've seen it in Birmingham. I mean, there was even a seat in Leicester, I can't remember which seat, which was won by the Conservatives simply because all the left-wing vote completely split. And somehow or other, the Conservatives came through the middle. But there's a lot of sectarianism going on in our politics now, and that really does concern me. And as you say, there are parts of Birmingham that have been completely captured by Islamists who are willing to take arms They were willing to get knives, guns, whatever it takes to try and subvert the rule of law. And the police who are there to protect us and to prevent this from happening are basically just saying, oh, well, if you're going to do that, we'll just let you get away with it. I mean, this is a complete breakdown of law and order in this particular part of the country.
I know, shocking, absolutely shocking. Final question for you, Andrew. How's the weather up there? We've made planks of the day out of the local councils of this country because they haven't got enough gritting lorries, haven't got enough salt, they haven't got enough, safety recognitions for various different parts of the country. I mean, why is it that every single bleeding winter, when we get a little bit of snow and a bit of ice, we can't seem to cope?
It's a very good question because it happens every year. It's a bit like the NHS winter crisis. It's an annual event, isn't it? They never seem to learn. As the weather, it's been cold. It's been sort of sub-zero, feeling like it's been much colder. There just seemed to have been a lot of grit on the roads in my part, the East Riding of Yorkshire. So I can't complain of that. I've been driving around perfectly normally. There doesn't seem to have been any particularly icy patches despite the sub-zero temperatures. So maybe I should give a call out to the East Riding of Yorkshire Council, who appear to have done their job properly. If only other councils around the country would do the same.
Absolutely smart, amazing, splendid stuff, Andrew. Great to talk to you. Good to have you back on the team.
My pleasure.
This is, of course, the place to be. It's the home of common sense. Andrew Allison there from Popular Conservatism. We're going to be joining you after this particular show ends because we've got the after show today with Connie Shaw, who is here from the Free Speech Union. She's going to be telling us what they've been up to lately, and we'll talk through a few of the big stories that have been harming people who want their free speech to be free speech. Absolutely right. We're going to finish up perhaps with a visit from the Heron. Today, the Heron visited Dubai and said hello to my daughter, who's working out there at the moment, of course. So keep your eyes peeled. Every time you see a Heron, something good happens. Every time you see this show, we get 10,000 people watching it live, which is brilliant. Once again, we have swept the board this morning with popularity. Thank you to all of you for your messages. Thank you for all of your interactions. Thank you for all of your good wishes. We'll be back tomorrow from 7 a.m. once again, right here on the home of common sense. It is the Mike Graham Show. Coming up next, the after show with Connie Shaw.